Welcome to Strange Familiars. Allison.
Yeah.
How you doing tonight?
All right.
On tonight's show, I will be talking with Neveah, who has a YouTube show called Neveah's Nightmare, where she talks about similar things that we talk about here on Strange Familiars. But Neveah is also going to share some of her own experiences growing up on a mountain in Tennessee that sounds like it was an interesting place. Had some interesting things go down there. Before we get to that, I think Alison's going to be telling us about Bigfoot, but not the normal Bigfoot, not the usual Bigfoot covered here on Strange Familiars.
I'm going to say this is the original OG Bigfoot.
Uh-oh. Okay. All right. I'm excited to hear about that. But first, we have a giveaway. We are giving away 2 tickets to Greg and Dana Newkirk's Haunted Objects live show at the Pulo Arts Center in York, Pennsylvania on September 12th. We are going. But we were gifted 2 tickets to give away by a kind listener, and we are doing that via Instagram. So for details, go over to our Instagram account. We're at Strange Familiars. All you have to do is follow us, comment, and tag somebody in the comment that might like Strange Familiars. And we'll just choose someone randomly on Monday, this coming Monday. And again, that's 2 tickets to the Newkirk's Haunted Objects live show at Pulo Arts Center in York, Pennsylvania.
It would be nice if you lived close enough to really go. I would love if you felt like you were definitely going to fly in from Nevada, but...
Well, I saw one of the comments on Instagram, somebody said, this would be a cool thing to combine with our weekend. I think they were going to Mothman Festival or something like that.
Oh, yeah, if they're going along the way.
Or going down to see Mothman. I don't know when the festival is. But anyway, it was something to do with going to Point Pleasant, but they also could go there. So, you never know. Someone could be coming through the area.
That's true. That is the one good thing about York. It's convenient to get elsewhere.
So I'm looking forward to that next week. I will also be giving a talk in Columbia, Pennsylvania, home of the Albatwitch Festival, on October 3rd, 2024. That's the Thursday right before Albatwitch Day. So if anybody's coming in early and you're looking for something to do that night, that's at the Columbia Market House at 6 p.m., I believe.
There's usually eats. There's usually good vittles, I would say, and not just some chips in a bowl.
They have good stuff. Cause the people that have stands at the market, do they kind of cater it?
Yeah, or it's somebody Chris knows. I don't know, but it's always really good food.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. Because I've only been to one. You've been to a few of those talks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's October 3rd. I think I'm going to be talking about disappearing evidence and the paranormal. And you know me. I'll be concentrating heavily on the Bigfoot world as regards that. So if not that, it'll be some sort of paranormal talk. Again, that'll be October 3rd, 6 p.m. at the Market House in Columbia, Pennsylvania. Hope to see you there. If you're coming in early for Albatwitch Day, you get a little bonus there.
And Albatwitch is earlier this year than it was last year?
Albatwitch is the first weekend in October this year. It's usually the second weekend, but this year it's the first weekend in October. So please come by. We will definitely have a stand there. Hopefully it won't pour rain in buckets all day like it did last year.
Even if it was even a little warmer, I'd be last year was really
no,
it was the roughest one I think we've ever.
I'm going to tell Chris that if it rains this year, we need to be under that overhang because Chad's not going to be there, so we're not going to have the extra tarps and everything to keep our stuff even a modicum of dry.
Yeah.
Those pop-up tents, they're good for keeping the sun off you. Maybe a little bit of wind if you have walls on them, but they do nothing for rain.
Yeah.
Maybe a drizzle they'll keep off you, but not anything more than that. Speaking of Chad, he will be at The Gather Thing. It's a bushcraft event at Bluestone State Park in Hinton, West Virginia. That's coming up very soon here. That's September 5th through the 8th.
Is that West by God, Virginia?
That's the same place. So go see Chad. I think he will be vending there at The Gather Thing. Again, that's at Bluestone State Park in Hinton, West Virginia, September 5th through 8th. All right, Alison, tell me about Bigfoot.
Well, these are several Bigfoot.
Oh, there's Bigfoots is.
Yeah, I have one female Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
I have another pretty famous male Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear my notebook rattling. That means it did work. And 3 other lesser Bigfoot.
Okay.
Not babies, though.
Not babies.
No, these are just lesser Bigfoot.
So nothing circled in red in a bush.
No.
No.
No, but there are plenty of clear pictures of these people.
Oh, clear pictures.
Yeah, clear Bigfoot pictures.
Clear Bigfoot pictures. All right.
Okay, so the most famous of all of them is a woman. And this is Fannie Mills, who was the Ohio Bigfoot girl.
Oh.
And
What year are we talking about?
okay, she was born in 1859,
Okay.
and she was a circus performer.
So these are circus people. These are circus big feet.
Yes, see, she literally had big feet, a Bigfoot. She suffered from a disease called Milroy's disease, and it caused like sort of like an edema in the feet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's some doctor listening who will elaborate on how wrong I am about this, but the general gist of it is, since I can't show you a picture through telepathy yet, these are people who had really big feet, and they performed as Bigfoot.
Okay. So they were known just for their big feet. When you say they performed as Bigfoot,
Yeah,
this is pre the area of hairy men being called Bigfoot.
Yeah. She was just the Ohio Bigfoot girl, which is odd because the most famous male with the same disease was from Ohio as well. I don't know what's in the water. I don't know how close they lived. I'm gonna see if I can suss out how close they lived to each other. See if there really literally was something in the water. Maybe some of our Ohio friends can tell us if there is. I mean, there's stuff in the water here. So
I mean, you know what they say about women with big feet.
they're the more valuable circus performers. Like, as far as circus pictures go, the Ohio Bigfoot girl, she's one of the like holy grail pictures.
Oh, really?
For rarity and
Oh,
like,
wow. Wow.
she really did have quite a big foot. Such big feet that in the 1880 census, and this is how I know that I found her, it says deformed feet under sick.
Mm.
Okay, so in 1880, they were living in Perkins, which I guess is Erie, or I don't know if it's Perkins County, Erie, Ohio, or Erie, Ohio in Perkins County.
Okay.
But she was born in Sussex in England and moved with her family when she was younger to Ohio, and then started traveling around probably shortly after her father's death because she didn't want to, he had told her that he didn't want her to be a circus performer, but after she died, sort of circumstances changed and she went on tour. She eventually married and became Mrs. William Brown, and with, I guess, the unfortunate name of Fanny Brown, which in England might have had different, maybe it's slightly different. You can tour with that name in America.
Right.
I don't know if you should tour with that name in England.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could.
You could. I mean, yeah. Lots of circus performers had multiple talents.
Exactly.
But Fanny, she was known as Fannie Mills when she was the Ohio Bigfoot girl. If you look her up, and it's pretty easy to find at least 1 or 2 photos of her, it is staggering the extent of her disability in these large feet. I mean, I don't want to make light of that. It was...
Now, I've seen a picture, I think, of a guy who had like one big foot.
Yes, she had 2. They weren't not proportional, but both were.
Both were.
Yeah, and they were. It looks extremely difficult to walk and to get around. It really would have been an extreme impairment.
Is this something that compression socks... Sorry, this is a very naive question. Is this something that like compression socks would have helped, or...
I'm going to show you a picture.
Okay.
And then you can make that decision.
I can decide.
This is like when anybody says any kind of problem they have on the internet, and then someone jumps in with like the
Have you tried aspirin?
Have you tried tea tree oil?
Yeah.
Like, let's see. Like, I don't know. Pick a disease.
Oh, I've had lots of suggestions on MS.
Yeah.
Where it's just like,
have you tried tea tree oil?
have you tried tea tree oil, yoga, and stretching?
That'll probably do it.
What about some aromatherapy? I'm willing to try all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm also not going to ignore what my neurologist says.
Let's
put it that way.
People are always helpful with that, or like for infertility, people always say, "Have you tried just not?" Like maybe you don't actually want that.
Have you tried wearing red?
Oh yeah, like I had a chiropractor tell me I should wear red because I wore too much black. That was probably it.
And it was affecting your infertility.
Okay, so I'm going to show you a picture of Fannie Mills. Here she is. You can tell from her very normal size proportions elsewhere. Here are her hands, and those are her feet. I don't think compression stockings are going to be doing a whit of good there.
Lordy. Yeah. Wow. All right.
Looks painful, doesn't it?
Shaquille O'Neal's got nothing on her.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay.
But she was able to make a living, and she died in 1899. She would have only been 40 years old. But I don't think that it was actually from the Milroy's disease. I think it was something it's not supposed to be life limiting in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Although, do we 100% know that was the cause of her ailments? Was there like an edema? That.
A clotting issue or something.
Yeah,
I know they often saved the skeletons of these performers.
I don't know about skeletons, but it's very common to save the shoes. Like I know who owns some of Tom Thumb's shoes.
I'm wondering, is this more than a swelling issue? Like, are their bones, are the bones growing?
Okay.
Outsized as well.
So it says it's a disruption of the normal drainage of lymph nodes that leads to fluid accumulation, like lymphedema.
Okay.
And so it's just in the soft tissues. So my suspicion is that that's all swelling around
There's a
normal sized foot
in there. Oh, that sounds awful. I mean,
Yeah.
it would be awful either way, but
Yeah, so I guess it's basically a disease of the lymphatic system.
did she try tea tree oil?
I'm not sure. If she had, I'm sure she would have been cured by now.
As I'm saying this, by the way, I want to, because I am for alternative healing practices. I'm making a little joke because I think sometimes people advise me almost to ignore the neurologist, and that's something I won't do. Mm-hmm. But I will try those along with what the neurologist prescribes. I have no problem trying things like that and putting my faith in things like that and seeing if they work. You know what I mean? So I want to be clear about that we're making little jokes about it, but
I think also because people ultimately do want to help other
Exactly.
people, and I think it comes from a good place, and it also comes from a place of like when you don't really know what to say, you just say something sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and so maybe.
And John and I were taking a hike yesterday, and we were talking about similar things. And I said, sometimes I think it's just a matter of someone taking the time to care for you in whatever way they can. And sometimes that can work in a way. I mean, sometimes just someone taking that time and saying, like, I care for you, and I want you to try this,
Or even if a doctor says, I believe you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can be huge for some people.
Yeah, because, they spend months and months and months waiting for a very important appointment. And when you're like easily dismissed,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it can be devastating.
So while I'm making little jokes about that, I want to be clear about that because I know we have several people who practice alternative healing, who are listeners. I'm not being disrespectful to that. I do think there's absolute value in that. Now we can continue with the big feats.
And tea tree oil is pretty effective for a lot of stuff.
You know what?
I really do like tea tree
Yeah,
oil.
I use it quite a bit.
Yeah, that probably started in the days when we used to, like, I don't know, ages ago, go to places with, let's just say a lot of hippies were around.
Mm-hmm.
And with a lot of hippie-adjacent diseases that could be magically cured by tea tree oil.
Hippie-adjacent diseases.
Diseases that in the modern world, if you were not a hippie, you would probably not have. Let's just say that.
Ringworm.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Your lice, your ringworm, your moldy dreads or whatever.
So as far as we know, she did not die of Bigfoot syndrome,
No.
of Milhouse disease.
No, she did not. But she was not the only Bigfoot performer. She had a competitor, a slightly younger competitor named Eugene Barry.
Now, I know I've seen somebody, did he just have one foot that was big?
I'll show you a picture.
I know I've seen somebody with just like a single foot. They're kind of up on a stool or something.
You may be getting this confused with, I'll show you a picture of him, but you might be getting it confused with, he is on a stool, but both feet are definitely affected. It's just one is more.
Well,
He has a shoe off photo, which is, I think.
That's the one I'm thinking of, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that other foot isn't right.
You're correct, but I was so focused on the one in the foreground that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't even look at the one in the background.
I mean, when you're looking at that, the other foot just seems sort of normal in comparison,
Yeah.
doesn't it? This photo, and I'll say I'm quite, I'm taking this from the Thanatos archive. He always has the best photos. this one on the back gives the measurement of his feet. So just for comparison between the left and the right, his right foot, the ball was 2 feet 3 inches.
Wow.
Instep 2 feet, heel 2 feet 2 inches, ankle 1 foot 9 inches.
This is width.
Yeah, I mean, this is how they're saying it, but I guess they're saying width, yeah.
Wow.
Calf 2 feet, length 1 foot 8 inches, and then the left foot is like 1 foot 5 inches, 1 foot 3 inches. So yeah, it's a little bit smaller, but
So 1 foot 8, it says 20 inches was his foot.
yeah.
We're in quite large Bigfoot territory. Like if you find like hairy Bigfoot, if you find like a 20-inch track, you're talking about a really, really big.
And I feel like if they had casts of his feet, that would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems like that his kind of is increasing. His calf as well does not seem to. I mean, how could you even? What kind of muscles would you have to support moving that foot? I mean, it would just change every.
So uncomfortable.
Like the most laborious and uncomfortable thing ever. Yeah, I just like those toes look painful. Like I'm making fun of the fact that they're called Bigfoot, but like this is just a hideous ailment to have to deal with.
It does not look pleasant at all.
I hope there's at least something in the modern age we can do.
You would think that, they'd be able to drain it or something in modern times. If it's a drainage issue, you'd think they'd be able to do something.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people that suffer from lymphedema too. This looks particularly painful. But he was from Ohio as well. He was born in 1867, so he's just a little bit younger than Fanny. He lived with his father. His parents were actually divorced. His father was married several times, and he had a wealth of brothers and sisters. I don't think any of which suffered from the same ailment as he did, even though that has a familial component. He traveled with Pawnee Bill's show, and one of his first appearances before he traveled with Pawnee Bill, who was the famous Wild West man who turned into a circus performer like a lot of them did, he appeared in Lancaster.
Ah.
And I think my suspicion would be because we are so sort of centrally located, close to Philadelphia, New York City, Baltimore. We're very close to a lot of the old circuses. Someone probably saw him there as a scout, and then that's probably how he got the job with Pawnee Bill's circus. And there's even an accompanying picture of him. He appeared at the Sterling Museum and Family Theater at 208 West King Street, the greatest freak ever brought to Lancaster, Eugene Barry, the Bigfoot Boy, with his big stage show, open daily 1 to 4 p.m. and 7 to 10 p.m. So you're telling me that at 9:30 on a Thursday night there was more to do in Lancaster
Then than now.
What year is this? This is 1892.
So he had a whole stage show.
Yeah,
Tap dancing.
I would assume. Yeah, he probably just sat there. I mean, that's what most people did. They just sat on the valley, and people would. Sometimes they would talk back, and sometimes they would just sit there. And if it were today, they'd just be on their phone.
Let people gawk at them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people didn't have TV at the time.
Yeah, so this was their
the equivalent of a reality show.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, like, I think I looked this up where that is currently, and like in modern day, it's kind of near where the McDonald's is, close to the square if you're in Lancaster, so it's around there. I wanted it to still be have some kind of ghost sign for the musée.
Yeah, that sounds a cool name.
It is probably much cooler than the reality of it. The Sterling Museum was probably
not Sterling.
Yeah, probably fairly below Sterling. And I have an idea, like a romantic version of what these places look like, and then the reality is probably that they were like just really trashy,
like run down,
and just like a pallet with somebody sitting there sadly, and then just people sort of funneling in and giving their money and going, "Oh, look at that."
Yeah.
And then maybe buying a picture and taking off.
Yeah, maybe. That's sad. I want it to be like more, velvet curtains and.
But I have seen pictures where they have like a lot of the sideshow performers like on the valley, and they're sitting there, and it's like there's a little sign below them so you know who they are. Mm-hmm. And they really are up on kind of a stage. And it is like they are the sort of star attractions. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they reach sort of rock star quality. And there's certain ones did reach a certain amount of rock star quality, I think, like JoJo and some of the more recognizable ones like probably Annie Jones, the bearded lady.
Do they have groupies?
I know that they had groupies.
Really?
They absolutely had groupies because frequently people would run off with a sideshow freak. There is a really...
So you're saying there's a chance for me? Yes.
there is a chance for you. As a groupie or as someone to have groupies?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah. Tim, the Pennsylvania Bigfoot boy, will be performing The Greatest Freak Ever Brought to York.
Well, so were there other Bigfeets?
There were. So there were some that didn't even come from Ohio. Can you imagine it?
So it's not just Ohio.
No. There was Willie Rowland, the Mastodon Bigfoot boy, and he traveled with Robinson's Dime Museum. There was Thomas Young, the Bigfoot boy of Illinois, and he traveled with Cole and Middleton's circus. There was Gene, Gee-Nee, the Bigfoot boy who had 28-inch long feet in 1908.
Jeez.
So you know that thing about where they say, like, every adversity is an opportunity?
Yeah.
It really was the case for a lot of people.
Well, I mean, you've mentioned this before, and that, I guess, is the guy who wrote the Freaks book that you talk about.
Yeah, Robert Bogdan was one of the first people to talk about, sort of getting some agency. Like, now everyone's situation is entirely different, and particularly, like, performers of color were absolutely more taken advantage of than... And younger people were taken advantage of.
Of course.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really sad stories there. But then there were people who were able to make a living in a way they would never have been able to make. I think of like Eli Bowen, who only had, he was missing the bottom portion of his body. He had feet that are attached to his torso. But he was an amazing acrobat. He's incredibly handsome. He was known as like one of the handsomest men in the circus community.
Huh.
He could do somersaults, and he had like this really long-term career that lasted from the early circus days up through Coney Island. And he managed to save his money and not blow it. And he had a farm for his family, and he like had this like wonderful, rich family life. And it was actually like a pretty good story. Like,
he wasn't the one from Baltimore.
No, but Johnny Eck did have the same.
Johnny
He
Eck.
had the same exact.
Okay.
Well, he had like a similar
thing. Okay.
disability. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I got confused.
Yeah, because they have the same. And Johnny Eck. Yeah, I think Johnny
Eck was a little later, right?
Yeah, he's into the into the 1900s.
Okay. Yeah.
But he did perform in York too. I actually have an article clip from where he had a birthday party at one of the local fire halls while he was performing here.
I remember the Baltimore City paper had a cover story on Johnny Eck one time, back in the 80s or 90s, something. And I remember being fascinated.
Well, he and his twin brother had a railroad that they would, like a miniature railroad. And they were also in Baltimore, that tradition of painting screens.
Yeah.
They were screen painters. They had a pretty rich life, although they lived in an area at one point in Baltimore which was a little sketchy, and sometimes they were broken into, and they were like, you can't really hide when you look like that.
Yeah, I guess not.
And you become a target. Definitely Baltimore institution, the Eck brothers.
And we've talked about it before as well, like the way the sideshow performers were presented changed from the 1800s to like the 1920s. Like the pitch cards and stuff in the 1920s are much more...
No, I don't really collect those because I don't find them... Like in the 1800s, they're posed in this way that makes them look like sort of important royalty or like...
exotic. Or,
Robert Bogdan always talks about the sort of aggrandized photos of that era. Like, and they're really beautiful, and they give people some respect,
But by the 20s, you get this, they're just like laying on a burlap sack kind of thing,
and there's like more of a focus on less of the person and more of like whatever it is that is making them saleable, whether it's like some aspect. Again, you tend to see too that there becomes a change from people of all sorts of, like from maid freaks, people who are Circassian women who are teasing their hair up, and tattooed people to like a real sort of like prurient like fixation on people's like gender, sex issues, things like that. That becomes more of something that people find fascinating at that point. And also the way they portray people that are overweight, it becomes like less of like someone dressed up in very fancy clothes that just happens to be overweight to like this very much like exposing skin and making them look as much, it's
Yeah,
it's a debased version, I
yeah,
think,
very
of it.
different presentation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that there were
Or Bigfoot before Bigfoot.
there were Bigfoot before. So I don't know. Is this the template? Is this the template for Bigfoot?
I don't think so, but I think you could go back to maybe a circus wild man, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, I feel like the circus is a template for a lot of things. So
Well, it definitely weaves into so many of our stories. I mean, look, like a couple episodes ago, we were doing Fluorescent Freddy, and they were like, "Oh yeah, the circus stayed over in French Lick."
yeah,
Like, what? There's a circus connection there. Of
Yeah.
all places, like French Lick, Indiana. Like,
well, the circuses would winter in really bizarre places where they would just find like
didn't you say one wintered around here? Didn't we find that out? Like,
yeah, there was one that wintered in. There were several that wintered in Columbia. There was one that wintered in Glen Rock.
wow.
And sometimes it's a matter of like animals go one place, people go another kind of thing. But sometimes like for the bigger circuses, a lot of people, if they weren't traveling over the winter time, would spend the winter with the whole circus in like some faraway place. I mean, that's like, is it Ringling? That's in Baraboo or the big circus. I should know this, but yeah, these like far flung places. Like, who wants to spend the winter in Baraboo, Wisconsin? No offense to Baraboo, Wisconsin, but I just feel like it's very harsh.
But I mean, maybe if that's where your people are. You know.
And if that's the cheap place where you can winter
Yeah.
your animals and you have people to take care of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, the circus crops up a lot around all this stuff. Yeah.
So if you find any genuine Bigfoot boy or girl photos, you know who to call.
Let Alison know. She's your circus photo expert. All right. Bigfoot before Bigfoot. Some more circus folks. Thank you, Alison. I'd like to thank our patrons. Thank you, patrons, no matter where you are signed up to help us. Thank you so much. Strange Familiars could not happen without our patrons. If you like Strange Familiars and you'd like to help us make the show and get extra content besides, you can become a patron at Patreon. It's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. All of our patrons get commercial-free versions of the weekly shows, as well as full extra episodes of Strange Familiars every month. We do at least one. Often we do more. To check out all the options, go to patreon.com/strangefamiliars. Remember, we are going to be raising the rates for that coming up. But if you get in now, as long as Patreon lets us keep doing this, you will be grandfathered in at the $4 rate. That's the entry-level rate, or whatever rate you choose from the different tiers there. And you can stay at that. As long as you keep paying that amount, you'll be paying that amount. And when the prices go up, it won't affect you. Once again, it's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. There's also an option on Apple Podcasts. There it's called Patron of the Strange. And Apple Podcast subscribers get the weekly shows commercial-free, as well as the extra shows monthly. Once again, I'd like to thank you wherever you're signed up. Thanks so much. I'd like to welcome Neveah to Strange Familiars. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So
Good.
you do a YouTube show called Neveah's Nightmare. And
Yeah.
what kind of things do you cover on this show?
I kind of talk about everything. I'm a bit of a history and weirdo buff, I guess. I like history, but in the aspect of things that are strange about history. Ghost, aliens, true crime, things in that nature, abductions, ghost stories, clown sightings, things that give you the heebie-jeebies. That's what I like to talk about.
And are you covering these topics like, will you do recent sightings as well as historical stuff, or you just have a historical perspective on it?
Oh, I do both. It really just depends on the topic. Like sometimes I'll do videos that have It's a general topic but has different stories, and sometimes one of those might be historical, or they all might be historical, and one of them's more recent. It really just depends, but yeah, it depends on the story that I'm covering, but I like history and recent stuff.
And is this just on YouTube?
Yeah, I'm eventually gonna move to TikTok and Instagram, but I'm a procrastinator and I'm also a college student, so I've gotta manage both.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't even have the student thing for my excuse. So yeah, but it's not. You can't find you on like podcast platforms and stuff. Then.
I've done a few podcasts. Oh gosh, which ones have I done? I was just on one the other day. Steve Stockton's podcast. I can't think. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I just meant is Neveah's Nightmare available as a podcast, but it's just on YouTube.
Oh yeah. It's just on YouTube.
And is that the channel name as well?
Yeah, it's just Neveah's Nightmare.
All right, I'll put the link in the show notes so everybody can find you then. So how did you become interested in all this weird stuff?
Well, both my parents are they got their own little quirks about them. So by default, I was kind of born, interested in the strange. But I don't know, I had experiences as a kid. I was a weird kid. I was on the internet at an early age. I was paying attention to like ghost sightings and scary things and abandoned places when I was like 10 years old, and I wanted to go out and explore the woods, and I was always scared of things in the woods and, monsters under my bed, and I don't know, but I wasn't necessarily scared of monsters under my bed, more so curious as like what monsters would be under my bed.
Right. Yeah. I think it's how a lot of us end up here.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody today, and they were saying about how my ghost would haunt this certain part, the certain trail that I like to walk here where I live. I said, I wonder if my ghost would still be creeped out in the woods at night.
Yeah. Or are you the thing that's creeping people out in the woods at night?
Well, I mean, I am that anyway. I don't know if you've seen pictures of me, but look, I love being in the woods, but it is creepy. That's what I tell people. I'm out there. I have no problem being out there at night, but I'm not pretending it's not creepy when I'm out there.
I like the woods. I like the woods at night, but I gotta have a flashlight and I gotta be protected.
So you said you had some experiences when you were little.
Yeah. So I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, but I also partly grew up in a town called Crossville. I grew up on a little mountain with like a waterfall on the mountain. That's kind of the main attraction. But if you go up this little windy road, it takes you to the tip of the mountain. And at the tip of the mountain is where my great grandma's house was. And I would spend every weekend there. I would spend every summer there. Every time I had any sort of school break, I spent it up there. Every weekend I was there. I was there all the time. And my entire family lived on this mountain, and right behind her house it was nothing but woods. And there it was, it's one of those, you hear stories of like the scary little folk towns and the deep south in Appalachia, and you don't think anything of it, and you're just like, oh, it's, tales of these creatures and tales of people's response and folklore and everything. And even during daytime, it's like, oh yeah, you can see why there's folklore. And then it gets night and you're like, okay, I want to go home. Yeah, being there is definitely where I've had the most experiences, just growing up there, having family there. The house that my great grandma lived had been around since the 1800s, and it was real small. I remember as a kid it being very, very big, but I had recently gone back to it a couple of years ago and realized, wow, it's very small. The ceilings are real short, the staircases are real small, it's completely wooden. It's a very small house, but as a kid I thought it was giant. But her living room was set up to where if you were sitting on the couch, you could see directly out the door, and she had a glass door. And I was like sitting there watching TV one time, and this weird deer, I don't know how to put it any way than that. It was a deer that looked like a deer, but it didn't look like a deer. And it was just staring through the door. And I looked at my grandma and I was like, do you see that? And she was like, you don't see anything. And she closed the door. And there was a lot of instances like that. There'd be instances with fox foxes, other animals, more deer. And it was just, you see it, you don't talk about it, you don't acknowledge it. And if you try to talk about it, you're going to get your mouth popped.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she definitely saw it, but she was like, no, we're not talking about this.
Yeah. And like, it wasn't just her, it was everyone on the mountain, anyone in my family. Me and my cousins were the hoodlums of the of the mountain, I guess, and we wanted to know. Like, we would make little fake cardboard Ouija boards and play outside of the scary church on the mountain and all sorts of stuff like that because we wanted to know what's out in the woods. And then my aunts would like tell us ghost stories and tell us stories of when they would play the Ouija board in the attic of the house. And then I've heard stuff from my grandmother who hasn't even been in relation to that side of my family in years. And then I heard stories of my grandmother being in the same house and her levitating while playing the Ouija board with her boyfriend's cousins and all of this stuff. And it's the house itself is scary because it's the oldest house up there, but it's also for me like a sense of home. So I can't really be scared by it. So when I hear ghost stories of the house, I'm like, okay, I'm still gonna sleep here.
Your family still owns the property?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think my family owns that entire part of the mountain, at least where my grandmother's house is, because she's got a bunch of farmland behind it, and then they own all the woods. But there's a bunch of like houses that is family that's either been married into or second cousins or third uncles, and they all live on there and they all own part of the mountain. So it just depends on what part of this little town of the mountain you're on, but every part of my family owns a part of that mountain.
This weird deer, was this the only strange thing you saw up there?
Oh no. I mean, I was chased by wild hogs one time. I don't know where they came from, but they were there. I saw a bunch of animals that I still don't know exist. I saw some squirrels that looked like squirrels, but they had the patterns of like other animals. We had these like, they were almost like dune buggies, but they were a little bit more stable than that. And we would ride around the perimeter of like the farm area, and the perimeter of the farm was lined with woods. And it was like a little trail that we could ride our like little four-wheelers and stuff on. And it was the only time that I had ran on the thing without my uncle. And I had went around it and I heard like grunting and like clashing, and I realized it was two buck fighting. And I was just sitting there watching them, and one of like they both just like stopped, took their antlers apart, looked at me, and then one of them, their antlers like kind of fell apart, and I was like, okay, I'm running. And so I just went back to the house, told my grandma. My grandma was like, what are you talking about? Be quiet. Yeah, then like there was this little church. It's still there. I don't know if people still go to church there. They did when I was a kid, but I don't know if they still do. It's been around since before all of the houses in that little town got rebuilt. And that's where me and my cousins would play our little makeshift Ouija board at. We'd play it in the parking lot because we weren't allowed in the church because we got in trouble for asking too many questions pretty much. And they were like, you're not allowed to come into the church anymore. But her house was directly beside the church, and we could get to the edge of like the little wooded part and be almost in the church parking lot, but still on her property. And we would sit there and we'd play this little Ouija board, and nothing ever came of it. But one time we were messing around with it, and we were both just, staring at the church, like, is anything gonna happen? Like, it's not moving. And we had like watched the drapery on like the drapery curtains on the windows. It like kind of morphed into a face, but we were both like, we're tripping. We're tripping. We're being stupid. But like looking back on it, the folds definitely looked like a smiling face. Like it looked like the sad and happy theater clowns,
Yeah.
but it was just like the smile in the eyes that morphed into it. But it was like the curtain, but it was like the folds in the corner. So it was weird. I also had an instance where I was leaving her house, and she was about 500 feet away from my grandma's house. And I was always like, it was a big thing that you didn't go out at night. Like, you always be back before night. We have dinner the second like nighttime hits. You be back before night because I mean, there was so many wild animals out there. The same cousin, one time her house got broken into by a bear. So like, you come in at night. When it gets nighttime, you come in. You don't know when it's outside. And it started to get nighttime, and I was running late, and it had gotten night, and I was walking back to my grandma's house, and I was walking by the church, and I saw this silhouette of this like bridal woman, almost like she looked like a like she like I don't know how to explain it other than like those Victorian, not Victorian, but like 1800s, very, very simple, plain white wedding dresses that you see in photos from like Western times.
Sure.
It looked like that. And it was just kind of a silhouette of her. And then I heard horse galloping and like chariot sounds. And then I was like, whoa, booked it to the house. Booked it to the house. Didn't ask questions, didn't look back, just booked it. Walked in the house, told my aunt. My aunt told me some elaborate story about how this woman she either got murdered or she killed herself or she killed her husband, something along the lines, but she got stood up on her wedding day at this church, and this something happened with the husband. Either she died or the husband died or they both died, but something happened and she got stood up on her wedding day and someone died. And she told me this elaborate story after I was like, I just saw a girl in white. She was standing in the middle of the road in front of the church. And I heard horses, but I didn't see any horses. And then she told me this story. So I don't know if any of that has a lick of truth to it, but what I saw is what I saw. And whether or not that ghost story has any truth to it or not, it makes sense in my mind.
So did your whole family sort of acknowledge this area was haunted?
Oh, yeah. But like, no one says anything, like, at all. If my family knew that I was talking about this publicly, they would probably never speak to me again. But I also don't know because some of my family is also the type of hillbilly that wants to get famous. So who knows? But like my mom's a very spiritual person and she'll talk about it, and her dad will talk about it because he's kind of the same as her. My mom is very spiritual, and she talks about experiences that she had up there, but I don't want to retell her stories because they're her stories and I don't want to get them wrong.
I understand.
But I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone's got a story from there. Whether or not they say it or whether or not they believe it themselves is for them to say. But I think everyone has something to say about the mountain.
And what came first, do you think? Like chicken and egg question. Do you think you were interested in this stuff and you sort of started finding it, or do you think it found you and then you became interested in this stuff?
Ooh, I don't know. Ooh, I don't know. That's a good question. Okay. I was definitely a very interested kid in the weird, but when I had experiences per se, I wasn't interested in paranormal weird. I was interested in horror movies and metal and ghost stories that people would type up on creepypasta. Like, I was obsessed with the more, I don't know, trendy stuff that was going on at the time. And then experiences happened, and then I started getting a little bit more edgy and a little bit more of, oh, I want to know why. I want to know why does this happen? Oh, people think it's ghost. Okay, why? And then just kind of spiraling after that.
So a little both end there.
Yeah.
When y'all were messing with the Ouija board, like, I know it's been a long time and there may not be an answer to this question, but do you think you were doing it because you heard stories of the cool stuff that happened to your aunts and your mom and stuff, or do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. My aunt had told me that her and my like living grandmother had played the Ouija board in the attic with her cousins, and my grandmother levitated, and the Ouija board was still somewhere in the attic. And when she told us that, me and Brooklyn lost our minds, and we begged them to let us up in the attic and they wouldn't. So we got a piece of styrofoam and wrote the Ouija board, like all the Ouija board stuff on it, and then took like a bottle cap.
Hey,
So
whatever
like
works.
yeah, it was definitely like, oh, whole scary story. And we've always wanted to use an Ouija board. And my aunt was willing to buy us an Ouija board, but the only place that sold it was Spencer's, and we were kids, so she wasn't going to take us into a Spencer's.
Oh yeah, 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 for sure. That's funny though. Be careful the stories you tell the young ones.
Oh yeah. I was a very interested kid, and if you've got anyone like me that's a little weird, they're going to be very, very, very intrigued and want to try everything that sounds like a risk.
Yeah, that was me too. Like just anything that sounded cool or weird, or I was like, yeah, I think I need that. I bugged my parents from. I remember from a very young age, I'd hear about ghost stories, locally, and I'm like, I want to go there. Can we go there? I want to go there. And it's like they're like, for what? Like, like,
Yeah.
because there's a ghost story about it. They did not understand it, and I doubt they thought I'd ever make my living at it. But here I am, mom and dad.
Oh yeah, it's okay. You know what? You're happy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So life goes on. You move off the
Mhm.
mountain then?
Yeah, I never really lived there per se. I just got really close with that side of my family when I was like around 5, and then I just was over there every weekend, every summer, every spring break, every winter break. I was over there. But I lived in Nashville with my grandmother that I'm still living with. I've lived with her full time.
And do you experience anything off the mountain?
I mean, I've had one situation where it was like, oof, that was definitely something, but I don't really know if I chalk it up to bad energy or an experience. I had went ghost hunt, or not even really ghost hunting. Me and a couple of friends a few years ago had found an abandoned school, and we went and we were just, hanging around, just looking around, and we went into this one like classroom, and the classroom had two closets on the very back wall, and one of the dudes that I was with was standing in the middle, and he was like saying something, and the second that I walked into the room I wanted to leave, and I felt like I was having a panic attack, and there wasn't any real reason because the room was the exact same as every single room that we had been in. He was just standing there, and I was just looking around, and then my eyes got locked on one of the closets, and I was just completely locked on it, and I couldn't look away from it. And then someone had walked in front of my line of vision in front of the closet, and they walked in front of it. I saw two glowing red eyes, and then someone else walked in front of it and they were gone, and I screamed and left the room. And I still don't know if I chalk that up to an experience or bad energy because there wasn't anything else like that in the school. It could have just been something bad happened in that room. There was currently homeless people living in there. There wasn't any when we had went in, but we had seen like tents and stuff, so we knew that there was people that were residing there, just not there at the time. And we made sure like not to mess any of their stuff. But like
Sure.
we don't know if it was something that happened there in the school, something that happened there after the fact, some energy that we dragged in, and I was just picking up on it. But the dude that was standing in the middle, when I had walked out, it took like the group that we were with a minute to walk out, and he came out and said it felt like something had grabbed him. And I hadn't even told anyone else
Hmm.
why I had left. I had just kind of like under my breath, like, had a little mouth closed scream moment and walked out of the room, clenching my fist. So, like, he wouldn't have known why I left the room. And he said that he left because he felt something grab him. But I don't know. I was also with a group of teenage boys. They could have all been lying.
Well, I used to. I won't say I didn't believe people when they talk about being grabbed, but I would often think like, really, like on like ghost tours and stuff, and like take Gettysburg as an example, like around there, I remember people, oh, I've got my ankle was grabbed, or my arm was grabbed, and I just remember being kind of like, I guess so, like not fully believing them, but not fully disbelieving them. but just like thinking, well,
Yeah.
maybe something shifted and you felt like you were being grabbed and we're on a ghost tour. So, and then it happened to me. I was in the woods when it happened, and it felt like someone reached out and grabbed my pack and yanked down hard. There was no question about it. I could even feel like the straps, my pack tighten up. Like, so in my
Hmm.
mind, I imagine like this hand sort of grabbing my pack, and as it tightens my pack, the straps tighten up my pack, and they yank down hard. And I whipped around. I thought it was the guy behind me. I was getting ready to give him a piece of my mind, and
Hmm.
he's like 8, 10 feet behind me, rolling a cigarette. It was not him. So
Yeah.
once it happened to me, I went, "Oh yeah, now I believe these people." Like, this does happen. So it's not like I fully doubted him before, but I just was kind of like on the fence. I was like, I don't know about that, but yeah, I think that happens. I mean, it happened to me for sure.
Yeah. I believe it. It's also just like in this specific situation, I don't know if I would believe him per se,
Yeah, yeah.
because I was with like a group of 17, 16-year-old boys, me and my one 16-year-old friend. So we were all just kind of like a bunch of teenagers. These were a bunch of boys acting like idiots.
Hmm.
He could have just been lying for attention, or he could have been telling the truth,
Right,
or he could
right.
have been telling the truth.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I know that it felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest, and whatever energy that was coming from that closet, I didn't like it.
Do you have any theories as to what all this stuff is? Like, do you think ghosts are somehow connected to the weird deer thing, or do you think it's all separate? There's no wrong answer. I'm just curious, like, where you land with that kind of stuff.
My experiences with being on the mountain lead me to believe that like things that with like deers and animals aren't necessarily ghosts and aren't necessarily anything that ever had to do with people.
Hmm.
I think it's more of like we don't know what's in the woods, and the woods wants to know us, but it should stay in the woods, so let's leave it alone and ignore it. And that's also just because like if you go on that mountain, there's all sorts of Native American memorabilia up there. The waterfall, there's like markings on the waterfall wall that is physically impossible for you to get to. Even if you had a crane, there would be no way for you to get to it because of the water. And there's no way for you to climb it. Like there's markings and drawings and symbols on the wall from people that were there long before colonizers ever came here.
Oh wow, I'd
So
love to see
like,
that. That is cool.
oh yeah, it's awesome. So like when it comes to animals and stuff, I think that that's something different entirely, and that's something that I would just rather not know about. I would rather it leave me alone. I leave it alone. But like, I don't know. I think ghosts are real, but I don't think there's any physical way for us to understand what ghosts are.
Hmm.
I think if there's anything beyond us living people, there is no 100% way for us to grasp the idea or fully even concept of it. So I believe that there's traces of people. I believe there's traces of history. There's traces of events. I believe there's energy footprints left in time. But I don't know. I'm a firm believer in like energy. If you put enough energy into something, you're going to get something back.
Hmm.
So, like, I don't know. It's a difficult question because I contradict myself,
I don't
if
think
that
there's any
makes
way to
sense.
answer without, if you're being honest, without contradicting yourself. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, ask me what Bigfoot is, and I'm going to be like, well, I don't know, is the answer. But if you ask me what I think it
Yeah.
is, it's some kind of spirit, but also
Mhm.
it can be physical, but also, you have these but alsos that go along with all this stuff. So I think that,
Right.
I think that's fine. I think that's a fine answer. I mean,
Right.
and people use ghosts as shorthand for so much. Like when I
Hmm.
like I like, when you're talking ghosts, you're talking about like the specific soul of a dead person. I think that's actually extremely rare. I think more often than not,
Yeah.
there's other things that are sort of playing with whatever energy we bring to the area, and
No, I fully agree.
they're happy to play on these ghost stories, or we just dress them in the ghost stories ourselves because those are the stories we know about the place. So yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of unknowns with this stuff. I think that's, being sort of agnostic about it and just saying like, I think maybe, but I think that's the way to
Yeah.
answer it. And, I don't think anyone can know.
I feel like you can definitely like those videos of people talking through EMF readers and, spirit boxes and Ouija boards and all of these things. I feel like if you put enough energy into something and enough energy into one person, whether they're living or alive, you can kind of get a glimpse of something, but you can't be playing with an Ouija board or a spirit box and say, how were you murdered? If
Hmm.
you is this person? Okay, it responds yes or no.
Right.
How did you die? It's not going to spell it out for you.
Right.
It's nothing in this past life is going to have any sort of energy to do that. It's not going to point you to the exact person that murdered them for you to solve their death. That's just not going to happen.
And I mean, in my experience, there are plenty of things out there who are willing to pretend to be whatever as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, there,
Oh
there,
yeah.
there are tons of entities out there. It's like, oh, you want me to be the little dead girl? Okay, yeah, I'll be that. For what reason? Whether it's sinister or just they want to have an exchange with us, I don't know. But yeah, I think so it's how do you know when people are like, yeah, well, I got this
Yeah.
information. It's like, well, how do you know it's accurate? You're going to trust this voice from beyond? Like, come on.
And then it's hard because then you start getting into the conversation of religion, and it's at that point it moves from what do you think and it's what do you believe?
Hmm.
What do you believe spiritually? Do you believe that there's something that can be evil? Do you believe that it's an energy that's evil? Do you believe that it's the devil that's evil? Do you believe that it's this giant snake that died a million years ago that's producing all this evil? Like, it solely just depends on what you believe and down to your spirituality and religion.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And some people are willing to sort of even be open minded within the realms of that, and some people will lock it down, and that's where you get the everything is demons folks, which
Right.
I'm sure you've run into. They're out there.
Oh yeah. No, I'm a funeral director. I'm in school for funeral directing, so I've met a couple people.
That's an interesting choice for someone who's taken this path through life.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I should have said that earlier. Yeah, I'm in college for funeral directing and embalming.
I had
Yeah.
a good friend that was on that same course, at least for a while. She ended up changing and I think became a business major or something after that. But for a little while, yeah, there was one college in Baltimore that had a program for that, and that's where I started. And I
Yeah,
had a
there's
good friend who was doing it.
only one college in Tennessee.
So, what makes you want to do that?
I had when my great grandfather died when I was a kid, I was kind of traumatized by seeing him in a casket. Long story short, the restoration was not what it was supposed to be. And I just don't want anyone else to experience that. And I want someone to be able to look at their loved one and not to look at them and think that's them rotting in a casket or they're gone forever. I want them to look at them and have like that last memory of seeing them in person. They looked good.
And I mean, I think it takes a certain kind of person who's willing to be this close to death this often. What do you think that says about you? Like, is it your desire to sort of help people through that hard time, or are you just drawn? Like, are you just a morbid person? What makes one want to go into that field?
A little bit of both. I like a lot of things about the human anatomy. I have a lot of knowledge about just what goes on inside the body, but I could never work in a hospital. I could never work in a hospital. I could never work as a nurse. I could never be a doctor. I could never be a surgeon. The thought of putting someone in pain makes me sick to my stomach. And if someone's like bleeding a lot, I'm gonna throw up. just because the thought of them being in pain, and I can feel what they're going through in my head, and it's nauseating to me. But I also know that I can help people in some way because I have that knowledge, and it's something that I have genuine interest in. And not only that, this is like the hardest time in any person's life.
Yeah.
It is the most devastating moment for any person on this planet. And I want to do funeral directing, but I don't want to do that my entire career. I mainly want to specialize in restorative art and embalming because I want to help people more so in the background. Like I want to know that what I'm doing is helping them in every way, but I'm not going to be able to handle forever what comes with helping these people.
Yeah.
Like when helping people in mourning, it's really traumatic because you have no correct way to talk to these people. There's no correct way to do anything. And not only that, they're strangers. It's not like my friend that had their dad die. It's a stranger that I've never met until today. So it puts them and me in a really vulnerable position. And I just want people to feel comfortable. And funerals are something that it's intimidating. It's people going to funerals thinking my loved one just died and now this person's trying to take all my money. And I don't want people to think that. I want people to have their funeral and while I'm there, invite me to church Sunday or invite me to go get lunch with their family. Like, I want people to know that I can help them and I can be there for them, even when it's devastating.
And the dead stuff doesn't bother you?
No, not really. I'm not hurting them.
Yeah, no, that's
They don't cry when I poke them.
right.
They also don't bleed when I poke them. So that helps my stomach.
Yeah, see, I can't do so. I collect skulls, and I have no problem picking up skulls. But if they're still gory, I'll wait till the ants have cleaned them for me. I
Oh, right.
But my wife has no problem. She doesn't care about that. She'll pick them up, clean them off. She's got no problem. But for me, I'm like, ooh, no, I'll wait till
See,
it's
I
clean.
can't even do that. I have a very large collection of bones, and if they haven't been sitting out in the sun for at least the past 3 months, I'm not picking them up.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not picking them up.
But you have no problem working on a human corpse.
Oh yeah, because they're disinfected. I've got 3 pairs of gloves on, PPE gear, hair mask, shoe mask, 2 face mask, face shield, and a respirator. I'm chilling.
All right. I don't think I could even with that. It's something about it. I don't know, And people are like,
I don't know. I just want to help them, and I can't help people in a hospital because I'll pass out or throw up first.
yeah,
But
I get that.
I can. It's if you don't get upset by the job, you're not doing your job good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you've got someone that's in a really bad state laying on your table and you're not upset about it, you're heartless, and you shouldn't be doing it. I'm sorry, but you shouldn't. If you have no feeling towards it at all, you shouldn't be doing it because then you have no emotions towards that family either and what that family is going through.
Right. Yeah.
That's just my take.
Yeah. Within that industry, and I know you're just in college for it, but I'm sure you're meeting, teachers and so forth that have been through the industry and so forth.
I worked in a funeral home for about a year before I went into school.
Okay. So is there an effort to sort of stay away from ghost stories and things like that and be very sort of plain and let's say scientific about things, just to say, like, let's not have the paranormal enter into this arena, because we're dealing with funerals and like that.
It honestly depends on where you work. If you work in a funeral home, if you work in like a funeral home in the middle of downtown New Orleans, you're going to be banking on that. You're going to be writing off, this funeral is haunted, this ghost haunts this funeral home, come have your funeral here. You're going to bank on that and you're going to get a lot of money. But if you're in a small town in Kentucky, you've got a population of 3,000 and you have maybe 50 funerals a year and you're the only funeral home, you better not say a single thing about a ghost. And you better be at church every single Sunday You better be at all of those little get-togethers for the elderly people. You better be there. You better be tending to those elderly people's every nook and cranny. You better be having crochet sessions at your funeral home when you're not holding funerals. It really just depends on where you are. And then it's also who you work with. The funeral home that I worked at, I had one coworker that she didn't want to hear a single thing about ghosts. But then I had another coworker who would try to convince me that the chapel was haunted, and the chapel wasn't haunted. The AC was just directly above the doors, so the door swung open. So it really just depends on who you're around. You don't bring it up around families unless every funeral home kind of has their little thing that wants to bring you into the funeral home. They've got cheap urns, they've got cheap caskets, they've got this specific hearse. If you're in a town like Salem, you might hold Wiccan funerals. Like, it really just depends on what you're banking on.
Sure. Yeah.
And who you're working with.
So human skulls come up at auction here. Like I said, like Oddfellows skulls and stuff come up at auction.
Well, it depends on the year. If it's like before the 1860s, I think it's allowed because that was like before the big grave robbing thing was happening.
Okay, yeah, that makes
Or
sense.
that might have been when it was happening, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
My teacher did a whole history lesson on grave robbing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's super interesting. So, do you have a favorite story that you've covered on Neveah's Nightmare?
Favorite story?
Yeah.
Honestly, the one that I did about black metal, because just the way that I did it was different than all my other videos, and I don't know, I had a lot of fun with it. I really love music and I really love metal, so getting to talk about black metal was just like, yes, I'm so excited to talk about this. And I did it instead of having like a script to look off of, I did it with a notebook and I wrote 3 pages of notes to make sure I had things in order. I did corpse paint and I sat there and I looked at the camera and just yapped. I said whatever came to my brain, and I liked it. I don't know if the audience liked it, but I'm really proud of it. And that's the kind of it's how I watch my people on YouTube, is I just watch people sit there and gossip. And so I kind of wanted to do that with this specific topic because I had so many opinions about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really excited to talk about it. And yeah, I think that's my favorite video.
What aspects of it did you cover? Did you do like the church burnings and all that stuff?
Oh yeah, I talked about the church burnings, I talked about Varg, I talked about Dead, I talked about Mayhem in its entirety, I talked about Dark Throne, a little bit of metal in general. I gave a little bit of background on metal in the senses of like Florida Death, black metal, deathcore, all of the different genres. I gave a little bit of background on what they are so people can differentiate them. But yeah, I mainly just talked about black metal. And then at the end, I gave my black metal recommendations.
So, the guy who wrote the book on all that years ago.
Oh, yeah.
My band, which is not a metal band, it's a folk band, squatted at the house he used to own. He had moved out, and we were on tour, and we needed a place to stay in the Pacific Northwest, and that became our sort of base of operations. It's basically an abandoned house. They had moved out, and new people hadn't yet moved in, so we ended up, that was our base of operations for our Pacific Northwest tour back in like 2000 or something, whatever it was.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's my connection to black metal.
Nice. My dad was on tour with Insane Clown Posse for a minute.
Wait, as a like helper, roadie?
Oh no, he opened. He was their opener for like a couple of months, and then they pulled out on a Ouija board, and my dad freaked out and quit.
Wow.
Yeah, he worked with a little bit of Jelly Roll too. Just Jelly Roll.
Very cool. Well, Neveah, I want to thank you for coming on Strange Familiars. I want to thank you for sharing your stories. The channel,
yeah, of course. Thank you.
The channel is Neveah's Nightmare. We'll put that in the show notes. And oh yeah, you're speaking at Strange Realities this year as well, aren't you?
I am. I talked a little bit about funeral directing on here, and I'm going to be talking about like the Victorian history of funerals and the oddities that Victorians did and all of the strange things that they did with their dead. So, if you're interested in what I have to talk about, I will be speaking at Strange Realities.
You should probably speak to my wife. Right behind me is a giant hairwork wreath, and
Ooh.
yeah, she's got a little collection herself of Victorian mourning stuff.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
And
I've got myself a little collection.
when people are like, "Wait, what's that? That's hair?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's hair." Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So we have, I think we have two big hairwork pieces that she has, and then she has a bunch of little jewelry and stuff with hairwork, and yeah, she loves that stuff.
It's okay. People ask me why I have Victorian baby photos on my wall. Don't ask.
Well, photos we got covered too. But she's actually a photography curator at a local museum, and she's where they took daguerreotypes back in the day. So she's
nice.
like crazy into Victorian photography, like that. She's hopefully going to be writing a book on aspects of it. So yeah, she's quite an expert on that, and massive collection. I mean, I'm looking at, I can't tell you how many stacks of Victorian photos in this room. She's got tons of them. So if you ever need anything specific, let us know. We can track
Noted.
down. We can track down postmortems. We can track down all kinds of stuff. She's got boxes and boxes and boxes of photos. That's Strange Realities. Are you going to be in person, or are you going to be one of the online speakers?
Yeah, I'm going to be in person. So if you got any questions for me, I'll be there on the stage, the microphone and a PowerPoint.
All right. And when is Strange Realities? I'll have to, I don't remember.
November 1st? Yeah, November 1st.
Okay, Strange Realities November 1st is that day one?
That is day one, correct.
Yeah, so it is. Adam's right here. He could tell us.
I guess I'll come in, yeah.
Yeah. So Adam tells us, like, so day one is in person. Tell us what the dates are for Strange Realities. I know you'll be back on to talk about it again, but just while we're mentioning it.
Yeah, well, I'll come back on closer to the time. November 1st and 2nd is the days that we'll be at SIR Nashville and online, and then November 3rd will be solely online.
Okay, alrighty. And I was going to be in person, but I had to change to be online. That's my final answer. So people can look for me as part of the online.
Maybe that will change. You never know.
You never know. I just changed once. We'll see.
You never know.
Thank you, Neveah. Thank you, Adam. Once again, Neveah's channel is called Neveah's Nightmare on YouTube, and I'll put the link in the show notes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Back to the owls, I see. Alison.
Close enough.
Is this one of the Degenhart ones?
It is.
So we've featured these before. It is an owl sitting on books made of... Is this considered art glass? Is that?
Yeah.
This is like a dark blue cobalt.
And here, I mean, since we always like a theme, a lot of these glass companies were from Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
So since we were talking about the Ohio Bigfoot girl and boy, thought I'd add some Ohio glass from roughly the same time period, maybe a little later. But this is my favorite color.
We've done these before, and they always sell. So if you want one of these Degenhart glass owls, now's your chance.
This is a cobalt blue one,
Mm-hmm.
which really catches the light in a nice way.
Yeah. It's dark.
It's a real dark.
Yeah.
It's that like really almost violet. But when you put a light on it, like you put a light behind it, it really glows in a nice way. Not so much like an inherent glow, but there's a glow to it from the glow.
It just looks nice.
Yeah, it looks nice with illuminated.
I would take a photo of that, and I'll put that photo in the show notes. And if you click on that, it'll take you over to our Etsy shop where you can purchase that and other curiosities of the week, those that are left. I'm pretty sure all of the owls we've put up have sold so far, so go ahead and hurry up if you want this owl.
Just look at the pictures. They are entirely what they seem.
What do you mean?
Like the Twin Peaks thing. The owls are not what they seem. These owls are
gotcha.
entirely what they seem.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm waiting to be asked to speak at a Twin Peaks convention. I've seen like parts of Twin Peaks episodes, but I've never seen a full episode. I did speak at the X-Files convention without ever having watched an episode of the X-Files, which I thought was hilarious. Luckily, they didn't ask me to speak about the X-Files.
Yeah, that would have been
Asked me to
uncomfortable.
Talk about Bigfoot, which is fine. But
I'm going to give I'm going to a tennis convention. I'm just going to talk about.
Look, if they want you to speak about antique photography at a tennis convention, do it.
Yeah,
You
I probably should.
Yeah, do it. We'll see if I ever get invited to a Twin Peaks convention. I can dodge the. I was very nervous about the organizers of the event
Finding out that you hadn't watched
or like
the show.
introducing me and then asking me what my favorite episode was or something like that. They did not. Thankfully,
You just say the one where Scully and Mulder kiss, of course.
I
Finally.
is that a thing? Is that a real episode?
Well, yeah, there's all that sexual tension for years.
I don't. I think I've seen an episode. Like our daughter was rewatching them at some point. I think I saw an episode then, but I honestly, it doesn't hum for me. Sorry for people who like it. But yeah. So anyway, so this owl is what it seems,
It's a cobalt blue owl that looks kind of like a glowing purple light.
and you can pick that up at our Etsy shop. Also at Etsy, you can get Strange Familiars T-shirts, stickers, patches, mugs, copies of my books. If you get them from Etsy, they come signed. Artwork, originals and prints. Alison has other ephemera up there and much more. Check out our Etsy shop. There's a link in the show notes, but our shop name is Lost Grave over at Etsy. If you type in Lost Grave, one word, it should ask you if you're looking for our shop. But you can also type in Strange Familiars, and our stuff should come up then as well. Alison's adding some ASMR in the background. She's looking up something on her computer.
Sorry. When you said something about typing or looking up, I was like, oh, I'm doing that right now.
I could be doing that now.
I should be doing that while you're recording.
So, yeah, if you support us on Etsy, that's another big help as well. Got some new T-shirts coming for Albatwitch Day. I think at least a new color, I believe, in the Eyes of Night design, which is a very popular design. We have some of that in white still, and we're going to do a new color print of that, I believe. And for the first time in a long time, we should have all sizes in of the Awoken Tree logo shirt in blue. We're going to do a reorder of that. And we'll see about maybe having another design as well. We're kind of working on the color options in it, where it's getting tight here as far as like...
Yeah, especially since it's the first week in October.
Yeah, getting it done in time for Albatwitch Day. So if we don't get a new design done in time for Albatwitch Day, I'll probably still do one this year. It just might not be in time for Albatwitch Day. Lots of big stuff on the horizon. Got some book signings coming up in October as well. I'll announce those closer to the time. Don't forget to check out Chad this weekend at the Gather Thing in Hinton, West Virginia. It's a bushcraft event, September 5th through the 8th. And don't forget our giveaway for the 2 tickets to the Haunted Objects live show, the Newkirks, at Poole Arts Center in York, Pennsylvania on September 12th. We're doing that over at Instagram. Strange Familiars, one word, at Strange Familiars, one word, no underscore. That's how you find us on Instagram. And you can enter there. We'll just choose somebody at random who comments on that. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back soon with more Strange Familiars. Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. If you want to hear more or purchase music, you can go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/strangefamiliars. We're on Instagram at strangefamiliars, one word, no underscore. For Strange Familiars merch, go to strangefamiliars.com/merch. And strangefamiliars.com is where you can find us 24/7. pretty Polly, come go along with me before we get married. Pleasure to see. She got on up behind him and away they did ride. She got on up behind him and away they did ride. Over the hills, the valley so wide. William, dear William, I'm scared of your ways. William, dear William, I'm scared of your ways. I'm scared you're rambling, led us astray. Rode a little bit further, and what did she spy? Rode a little bit further, and it's what did she spy? But a new dug grave and a spade lying by. Polly, pretty Polly, guessed just about right. Polly, pretty Polly, guessed just about right. Now dug on your grave the best part of last night. But he stabbed her through the heart, and her heart's blood did flow. He stabbed her through the heart, and her heart's blood did flow into the grave where Polly did go. Where is pretty Polly? It's yonder she stands. Where is pretty Polly? It's yonder she stands. Rings on